Pulsechain and Pulsex are both going to be going live very soon. Wouldn't it be nice to understand which could have better performance based upon actual data, not just conjecture, not just opinion from people? What if we could actually see what was taking place by a macro view? That is exactly what I did in this video. We took a look at about 7 or 8 different macro data points, like which website is more popular, pulsex.com or pulsechain.com, because these people are actually taking the time to go to the source of the information. We took a look at Telegram. We took a look at Google search and YouTube search, just the 2 largest search engines in the frickin' world. We took a look at hashtag usage on Instagram and hashtag usage on TikTok and growth rate on Twitter. All of these different factors together into one spot to get a better understanding what is going on. Excuse me. Not that they're not both going to be extremely successful, but which one are the people more interested in? Because when there's more people interested in it, then you tend to perform better. So, with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to friggin' see you. Now, if this is your second time here, I don't know why you haven't already subscribed. It's your second time here, bro. So let's get into this video. By the way, there's some links down below if you want to support, feel free, or you can check out on Twitter or Instagram or my other YouTube channel. All down below. That one's related to fitness stuff, a lot of fitness stuff on Instagram as well. And then on Twitter, it's pretty easy to get a hold of me. So I'm going to run through the different factors that we took a look at. And then we're going to look at an aggregation of all of them together to try to get a better picture of what's going on. Because when you look at something very close up, you only get one picture. And when you put that in comparison next to a bunch of other data points, you get a different picture. So this way we just get a more holistic picture of what's actually going on. And this is also evolving too. So that next week or next several days when we do this again, we could have more data points to get even more complete picture. So the first thing we took a look at was Telegram. Which Telegram is larger, but also which one's growing faster in terms of week over week, because we've been tracking this for over a month. On Twitter, we took a look at, and this is probably going to be one of on the next video that we do, where we're trying to understand the popularity of each. We're probably going to add another thing for Twitter. So on Twitter, there's a website called Social Blade, and you can put in a influencer's, companies will use this to try to gauge people's profiles and whatnot, right? Well, you can put in Twitter, you put in Pulsex, and you get to see, right, 41,000 followers, 42,000 followers. And the data that you're going to see in the spreadsheet was actually from yesterday, and that was on the 11th. Today's the 12th of April. Over the last 30 days, on average, they've gained 161 additional followers per day, right? So we're going to compare that to see which one is growing faster, Pulsex or Pulsechain. And then on YouTube, I didn't even mention this. This is another one of our factors. We have 3 ways to take a look at YouTube. We have the search interest, right? So that's going to be on Google Trends, which we're going to talk about in a moment, the second largest search engine, right? But what another metric would be like the actual views on the videos, right? So what we did is we came over here, we put in Pulsechain crypto to weed out a lot of the bullshit, right? Or the fluff, or whatever you want to call it. And we came over here, we searched over the last 30 days, we did video, and then we came over here to view count. And then we just added up the top videos here, the top 10 videos that had to have Pulsechain or Pulsex in the title or thumbnail, right? So right here is Pulsechain, and what we did is if they wanted to be included in the number of views, they had to be talking about Pulsex, right? So in the title, PLS, PLSX, Pulsex, um, or some derivative of that, or in the thumbnail, a picture of it, right? We had to give an indication that that's what it's actually talking about. So if that's the case, we took the top 10 videos sorted by view count over the last 30 days and tallied those up to see which of those topics is garnering more interest among the people. And then another interesting metric that we're able to see on YouTube, which this is a fascinating one because it's so unique, is over the last 24 hours, we look at day and then we come over here to relevance, which is the default, right? So it's relevance, video, and today. So this is over the last 24 hours. Same criteria, has to be thumbnail and or title. But here, what we did is we took the total number of videos created over the last 24 hours for each one, Pulsechain versus Pulsex. Now this is fascinating because you're like, well, why is that so interesting? Because think about the effort involved to create a video. So if you think about investing, the things that are going to grow are going to be the things that you apply time and money to. And to create YouTube videos, it takes time and money. And that money could be explicit, as in paying for different software to do editing or paying for, other pieces to go into it, right? But it requires a tremendous amount of effort. So if you get to see that a community, right, around Pulsechain or Pulsex, the global crypto or whatever community, however you want to define it, there's a larger number of creators applying time and money into one area. We already know that area, think about like if you're applying your effortful time and money into your financial literacy, do you think your financial literacy is going to grow? Like, you don't have to be a fucking idiot or like a super smart person to tell that. Yeah, of course it's going to grow. Same idea here. So this is a very interesting metric, at least I find. The next was the hashtag usage, right? On both TikTok and on Instagram. However, there's a subtle difference here. On Instagram, it gives us the total number of times that a hashtag has been used. So think about the subtlety of this. Total number of times that a hashtag has been used on Instagram versus on TikTok, it gives us the total number of views. Two different, same kind of idea. You're like, okay, hashtag usage, right? That's what surface level people do, but we're going a little bit deeper than that. Views is the total number of views on the content using that hashtag. So we have no idea how many videos are actually up there. Here, we know that these hashtags have been used 5,500 times almost. So over here, there's been 3.4 million plus views for Pulsex, right? Interesting. Now, this one here is also very interesting. By the way, this site is going to be going away in another 3 weeks or so, so this data point I won't be able to include anymore. I think I might have to pay for a membership or something like that, but it will be going away. So this is Alexa.com. This is an Amazon company, a web analytics company. They track estimated traffic, page views, bounce rate, etc. related to websites. And then they rank those websites. And to put it into context, remember there are millions of websites. So Alexa, this is for Pulsechain. And remember this data is from the 12th. I put it into the spreadsheet yesterday. So the numbers here are going to be probably slightly different than the spreadsheet, although I didn't check to verify, but I'm sure they are. Globally, Pulsechain.com is ranked 31,400. In the United States, they are ranked 16,187. But interesting to take a look at is this chart over the last 90 days globally. And you get to see there's a precipitous drop-off right around the end of March, and it's just like, boom. Where you kind of see like a kind of a little bit of a up yes, definitely an upward trend. Nothing crazy, but upward trend that's losing a little bit of steam. Like the slope of the line is greater in the first third here, or fifth of the chart. Then it starts to flatten out, still growing, but flatten out slightly. And then right around the end of March, there's just like, oh, fuck this shit, we're going off the cliff. And there's been a giant downward trend in the traffic going to pulsechain.com. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, before we get into the aggregation of the data, we are going to just take a look at Google Trends, because this, I always find this very fascinating. This is, again, the largest search engine in the world. We can look at it based upon the Google search volume or on YouTube search volume. So we're going to start with Google over the last 12 months and worldwide, right? In blue, we have contender number 1, Pulsechain. In red, contender number 2, Pulsex. We get to see that Pulsex has been winning as soon as it started launching, pretty much across the board, except for this very short period of time here where it wasn't. And then it started to like level out here. Another interesting way to take a look at this is over the last 30 days, because this gives us a closer snapshot and the data always looks different. But we get to see over here the average is approximately the same. 39 versus 40. This is the average search volume for these. Not in terms of the total number, as it says a percentage. So that doesn't mean 40 searches, 39 searches. It just says a proportion of the total search volume. Another is 90 days. Is what I like to look at. So this, see, the story is different here. Okay, so here, Pulsex, for the first 45 days of this 90 days, maybe longer, maybe a little bit longer, there's a downward trend in Pulsex search on Google. Pulsechain, and this is it's about 30% less search volume overall through this whole period for Pulsechain. But Pulsechain has been consistent. Well, it dipped right here in the middle section. So like the middle 45 days are lower for Pulsechain in terms of search volume, where the first 45 to 60 days were downward trending for Pulsex, where Pulsechain, the middle section sagged a little bit, and then they both started to pick up slightly here. But overall, Pulsex is winning in this period, but remember, it's the first 2/3 that are like, kind of biased because it came down or it's not necessarily accurate. Right? Let's take a look at YouTube search volume, and maybe I'll figure out a way to quantify this and put this into the spreadsheet as well. So same exact thing. Blue is Pulsechain, red is Pulsex. Now, this tells a different story. So look at how much above. Can you guys see this okay? Yeah, you should be able to see this, right? Okay, perfect. Okay, so look at how much more Pulsex is getting searched on YouTube than Pulsechain. Right, so overall, this average, you're like, well, Pulsechain is winning, right? But we have, 7 months or whatever period of time this is, from July to December, right? So 6 months roughly, where you have no search history for Pulsex, right? Or maybe right here, when they were trying to buy the site or something, right? You can see there's a little pop of it. But anyways, there's virtually no search history. Now on YouTube, there's a lot more interest. Let's take a look at this last 90 days, because I guarantee it's going to tell a different story. So we do see, similar to the web search, we see a slight downward trend, but pretty consistent across the board for both of these. With Pulsechain, the blue line underneath, we see that like a slight upward trend just in this, past 2 months or so, or month and, 10 days or something, right in this period, but it's dropped off. Overall, over the last 90 days, this is kind of crazy. 55 on average versus 30. So when we look at this, over the last 90 days on YouTube, there's almost 2 searches for every 1 search, meaning 2 people are searching for Pulsex on YouTube search versus every single person that is searching for Pulsechain on YouTube. Pretty interesting, right? Because on Google, they're very similar. But on YouTube, right, there's a bigger discrepancy. A lot more people appear to be interested in this from a Pulsex standpoint. Very interesting. Now let's take a look at the 30 days here. 30 days, the margin is closer. It's not 2 to 1. It's more like, what is that? 2/3 or 3/5, right? So for 5 searches for Google, 5 searches for Pulsex on YouTube, for every 3 searches for Pulsechain or something thereabouts, right? So that's kind of interesting. Several more. It's still more popular over the last 30 days, but we see this tightening up, right? There's a little bit right here, but then over this period of time, it hit here, it overlapped here, it's almost overlapping here, again, it touched here, again, it touched here. So over this last, 10 days or so, 12 days, it's been a lot closer than the first 2/3 of this. But this is all super fascinating, but let's put all this together and see what this pulls up. Okay, so let's describe what we got here for a second. The light gray here, this is Pulse. This is Pulsechain. This goes across this whole sheet here. The bold means that category 1. So in this case, Pulse 1, and in this case, right here, Pulsex 1. In this case, it's in bold. So this is a Telegram, right? So a bit of a difference in terms of the size easily goes to Pulse. But when we look at the weekly gains in terms of the people who are into these groups, we get to see almost a 17-fold difference in this. So 15 people joined since the last time I checked this in Pulse, where 255 people joined in the Pulsex group. So Pulsex is growing 17 times faster, roughly, than Pulse Telegram. Now, I think we're going to do maybe a deeper dive into each one of these categories, like Telegram, Twitter, YouTube, etc., because there's so much even more data we can take a look at to give us a better idea of like what's actually going on. When we look at Twitter, the average number of users followed per day, so this is the people that are following these accounts, Pulsex wins, right, pretty easily, right? Pulse has been about 130-ish on average, just over 130 on average over the last 4 weeks or so, where Pulsex has easily beat them out. But the interesting thing about Pulse is the number of followers following Pulsex on Twitter on a daily basis has dropped from 270 down to 164. And every time we're checking it, it's going down. And if you remember, the data I just put on here was from yesterday, right? So 164 on average per day. And here it's 161 already. So we can see that this trend is continuing to happen. Will it drop below Pulse at some point? I don't know. The sheer size of their Twitter following goes to Pulse easy, right? A lot bigger, 80,000 nearly versus 42,000. But the size growth over the past week over the last week, Pulse has actually grown at a greater rate, right? So you're like, wait, how does that happen? Pulse follows per day are only 133 versus 164 on average, right? In the data we just looked at. But remember, we're comparing weekly data of a monthly number, right? So this number here is average over the last 30 days of number of followers. So this number, as in over the last week, is probably substantially less. Well, whatever this number is divided by 7, right? 148 versus this number divided by 7, 167. So if we look at the most recent data, that would actually go to Pulse, right? There seems to be a shift there. Over the last week, Pulse Twitter has grown faster than Pulsex's Twitter. That's interesting. On YouTube, so remember on YouTube we looked at the total number of views, and here we see a changeover. We see a change from people more interested in Pulsex on YouTube, right? And we already looked at this data here. right? We already saw this, so we can kind of like maybe confirm this here potentially. Well, here we see a gigantic uptick in the number of views in the top 10 videos for Pulsechain from 147 to 257. That's a big uptick. We also see an uptick, so they're both growing, whereas over here this one is dropping, right? Well, it's still growing. The growth rate is slowing, would be a more accurate way of saying that. So these are both growing, but now Pulse has overtaken Pulsechain in terms of the total number of views. Now, one thing to say as a caveat for this is that there's no picture of the long tail. This says 200 and 257, right? And you're like, that's interesting, right? But we can see across the board basically on YouTube, when we take a look at the search on YouTube, we get to see that it's almost 2 to 1 over the last 90 days from Pulsechain versus Pulse. So this doesn't capture the long tail. So this could be like, okay, over the top 10 most popular videos, Pulse is more popular, right? But maybe Pulse has 150 videos and Pulse X has 700 videos, right? But the average number of views per video is lower, but there's so many more videos that there's actually way more attention on Pulse X, right? And that might be what this decides. But one way to take a look at that to get a better understanding is looking at the total number of creators putting out content over the last 24 hours, right? I'm not going to do this for like a week because I'd just be counting for days. But if you look at this, there was 37, this is as of yesterday, 37 videos created over the last 24 hours with Pulse, PLS, Pulsechain in the title or the thumbnail. 37 videos over a 24-hour period. That's seems like a decent amount. And it is growing. It's the highest number that has happened with Pulse, right? 26, 30, 26, 37. With Pulse X, they did see an uptick from the previous week, but still only 31 videos here. So this, I found that super interesting, what is going on with the number of creators and whatnot. These other two metrics are the hashtag Instagram and TikTok, as we mentioned, a little nuance there. There are more hashtags for PulseX than Pulsechain. But if you go and look at that, PulseX, if you think of like the word sex as part of Pulse, right? So like there's inevitable more fluff in PulseX. So I'm not sure how 100% like this, is here, because there's definitely people who use Pulsex, right? Pulsex as a way to like get people to click on shit, I would think. But the volume of views on TikTok is pretty high, pretty big differential. But then again, we go back to this and we're like, well, if somebody's been trying to do something for, 10 months, right? Pulsechain, versus somebody who's been trying to do something for 4 months, right? You get to see that there's a difference here, right? Because they've just been trying longer. They're still growing faster, right? 0.5 million, so 500,000 additional views over the last week versus 400,000 additional views over the last week. So that's kind of interesting. On the website, so the website across the board, this is another interesting data point, right? Because it doesn't, you're like, this is a little bit different. Well, PulseX's website is substantially more popular, both globally and in the United States. So people going to their site. PulseX is 21,000 versus 31,000, right? So 10,000 additional spots in terms of popularity. It's a lot of traffic. That's a lot of additional traffic. In the United States, 14,000 versus 16,500. Again, 2,500 spots, a decent amount for the United States. Probably has like one of, I would guess, I have no idea, right? Probably has more websites than other countries, so that the competition here would probably be greater, you would guess. And Pulsex is still doing better. It's interesting. Pulsex is a shorter word, maybe, but there's definitely more traffic, even globally. So that was kind of interesting. Overall, Pulse has about 5 categories, I think, and Pulsex has about 4 categories. They've won. I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Like, what are your thoughts on this? We're gonna probably dive deeper into some of these topics on different channels to really get a better idea. But what do you think? I'm super bullish on both. I do believe Pulsex may perform better. Um, Based upon the information I'm seeing, plus just how Pulsex is structured, it seems like it appears that it's just going to perform better than Pulse would, but they could easily both do like 1,000x over the next year or two or something like that, or more than that. But I do believe Pulsex could probably perform better than Pulse over time. Well, over the like intermediate time. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are down below. If you found any of this shit interesting, take a second, share this with somebody else you think would find it interesting, right? Nobody else is covering this topic in this way. So if you want to share the unique perspective on this, take a second, share this with somebody else, press that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to support the channel. Check out the links down below. If you want to go to the other YouTube channel, should be up here now. It's fitness related stuff, or Instagram down below, or Twitter. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. Peace.